Well, joining me now is Michael Costa, former New South Wales Treasurer, and Cameron Milner, GXO Strategies Director. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me. I'll get your mobile numbers after the program. But I'll start with you, Michael. It would have been a disaster, would it not, had Anthony Albanese returned from the US without having locked in that meeting with Donald Trump?
That's true, but and I'm glad he's got the meeting. I have to say that we really do need that meeting. The two issues that have critical importance for us are AUKUS and, of course, the tariffs. What I am really also glad about is that the meeting's in a month's time, because after Trump's speech, which I thought was a good speech despite his style, the clear position of Australia is in contradiction with much of what Donald Trump stands for. And I've got to say that the recognition of Palestine, and, we were promised that we would get, our bus to agree to a whole range of things, including, the stopping the pay for slay and, democratic elections and the re-recognition of Israel's right to exist. None of that stuff exists. So given that it's in a month's time, hopefully the environment will be a lot more conducive to getting the things that we need out of it. But if I was Albo, I'd certainly be worried about that meeting, because Australia has really left our best ally in the lurch.
Michael, you raise a great point. After that speech that Trump gave at the United Nations, and I'll talk to Rowan Dean, we're going to go through it together a little later. But could you imagine Anthony Albanese sitting down with Trump right after he'd come from the UN, having given that speech? I tell you what, to be a fly on that wall would be pretty amazing. So you're right. A month from now is probably very appropriate and helpful to our Prime Minister. Cameron, let me go to you. Can Anthony Albanese hold his own in the Oval Office with Donald Trump? Plenty of others have been made to look pretty silly when dealing with a US president who does not suffer fools.
No, that's right. I mean, Trump may well give Albo the full Zelensky in the first treatment the first time round, ask him what's his position on Palestine, what's his position on climate. And, and because Trump put down this position, as you said, at the UN very firmly, and it's completely in contrast to where Albanese is taking Australia and the hard left of the Labor Party. So I think there's a real problem there. And to Michael's point, you're right. I mean, unconditional surrender to Hamas on giving them Palestinian statehood with no conditions is just so typically weak from Albo.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we will look forward to that meeting a month from now, and no matter what happens, it's going to be absolutely riveting viewing, I'm absolutely sure. I want to talk to both of you about asylum claims, because it's been revealed more than 100,000 people whose asylum seeker applications were rejected are still here in the country. Now, that's a record number, and it's grown by 15,000 just in the past 12 months. Many of these people who should have been deported are now apparently undocumented workers. Michael, I think this would infuriate most Australians. If your application fails, I think most Australians would think you should be immediately deported, but endless appeals means people get to, stay while they're waiting for legal processes to play out. And then officials, I guess, lose track of them, and we end up where we're at.
Well, it's a joke if officials lose track of them. That's an absolute joke. That's completely unacceptable. Look, there needs to be amendments to the Migration Act and our Immigration Acts, because the bottom line here is, whilst, and I do support asylum seekers coming to Australia, but in an orderly fashion. And an orderly fashion means that you're processed offshore. You just don't arrive and claim, asylum. If you do that, there ought to be, a situation where you're either deported back to a safe location, or alternatively, you're dealt with very quickly. And if your asylum claim falls over, you are, maybe given one appeal, but after that, you're taken out of the country. I mean, it's an unacceptable situation where people are abusing the process, and we have no policing of it. The Act needs to be changed.
Yeah, and I think you're right to talk about maybe there's one appeal and then that's it. But at the moment, it seems like there's just appeal after appeal after appeal. It clogs up the system. As I said, they lose track of people. The whole thing's a joke. The other interesting statistic that came out today was, Cameron, last financial year, only 14% of people who arrived here and then claimed asylum were found to be legitimate asylum seekers. Or to flip it, 86% were found their claims were not justified at all, which says to me there's a lot of people gaming the system and playing on our good faith.
Well, I don't think they're gaming it. I think they're rorting it, James. They're rorting it. And this is the problem because, we look like we're tough on the borders, but we're in fact not. We're letting people come here, and I agree, Michael, proper asylum seekers through UN refugee camps and we've always got to have open arms for. But there's clearly a whole cohort of people who are gaming Tony Burke's rules, gaming them for their own advantage, and then slipping into the ether in terms of this illegal workforce that's out there, taking up rental properties, taking up houses as well, no doubt. So this is the problem. No, if you have your visa rejected, you need to be ejected. We need to send them home.
Michael, the other thing about this is that, and I'm a big believer in, oftentimes we ignore things because we say, well, it's not big enough to worry about. Then it gets so big, you're unable to do anything about it. And we've seen in Europe and in the United States, when it eventually becomes such a big problem that really it demands action, then all hell breaks loose because there's no polite or nice way to deal with it. It gets ugly, and that's really the danger for our country if the government doesn't address this. As I said, it's at record numbers now and growing.
Absolutely. And again, I refer to Trump's speech to the UN. I mean, he made it absolutely clear that it's a major problem across Europe. And, I thought his point about diversity of countries and the problems that they're facing with illegal immigration was a good point. I have to say that, thank heavens, in Australia, we've taken, on a bipartisan basis in the past, a fairly strong stance on this. And I note that the current Labor government is reversing some of its approach, just with Nauru and other places as offshore processing facilities. But you're absolutely right. You want to have a situation where the public supports proper asylum seeker processes for genuine people, and those that are rorting the system, as Cameron says, or are abusing the system, just have to be dealt with very quickly.
All right, I want to talk about trouble brewing within the Coalition Party. That's a different kind of asylum at the moment, as the Liberal frontbencher Andrew Hastie has taken to social media to call out what he says are nameless cowards and muppets who anonymously criticise him. He's been the topic of scrutiny from fellow MPs who believe his personal campaigns to promote Australian industry are not uniting the party. And so Hastie has posted images of anonymous party sources criticising his car industry video and captioned the post, quote, "Nameless cowards briefing in the paper. It was filmed by competent, patriotic Gen Z staffers, you muppets," referring to the video with the Australian-made Ford vehicle that he posted the other day. While all that's going on, Hastie has been rapidly gathering support from other MPs who quite like his campaign. So let me go back to you, Michael, just for a moment. This is the last thing Susan Lee needs right now, infighting between supporters of Hastie and those who believe he should just sort of quieten down a little bit.
It might be the last thing that Susan Lee wants, but it's the thing that the Liberal Party needs. They need to get this cleansing process over and done with in the next, 2 or 3 years. They're not going to win the next election, but they need to be in a position in the election after where they've got policies and they've got people that are not prepared to go along with a sort of Labor light approach and have policy differentiation. I think he's doing the right thing. And anybody criticising somebody for defending Australian industry has got rocks in their head. They've really lost the plot. The only way you can justify that position is if you're fully on board with the net zero religion, which are obviously, a large section of the Liberal Party are, and there lies the problem.
So, Cameron, what do you say to people who argue this? Well, if Andrew Hastie sees himself as a future leader, calling colleagues muppets and cowards on social media is not the way to promote his leadership ambitions.
No, and he should have done much better when he was in shadow defence. He made Richard Marles look like a good defence minister. I know people like Andrew Hastie. I think he's overrated personally, and I think the video was just a look at me moment again. So not helpful to unity, not helpful for where the Liberal Party needs to go, which is to put Albanese under pressure. Put the Labor Party under pressure. There's plenty of things for them to work with. But Andrew Hastie is going to be a distraction if he keeps this going, just like Senator Price was the week before.
Well, I've got to get your reaction to that, Michael, because I figure you do rate Andrew Hastie.
Well, no, when I look across that front bench, there's not many there that you could rate, and he's one of them, of course. Look, to me, the issue is not that. It's about policy. Susan Lee's going to go forward and be a failure. We all know that. She can't even get her act together on basic stuff at the moment. And, she's got a process that's going to go on forever. the Liberal Party needs to get through this cleansing. I don't think unity is going to help them at the moment. They can't win the next election. They need policy clarity. They need to get people in there that know what they stand for, and they need to deal with people that really do think Labor light is the way forward, because it is not the way forward. So, it's terrible that they've got to go for disunity, but I think it's the only short-term solution to their problems.
You mentioned that unity is not going to save them, and I'm always amazed when they call for unity, but you have to unite around something. Unity in and of itself is not something that holds you together. You have to unite around something, and something would be, I don't know, policy, which they're still trying to work out what their policies on pretty fundamental issues like energy actually are. We've just got a few more moments left, Cameron. I'll just finish with you. Just how much trouble do you think Susan Lee's leadership is in, or are we overstating it? She's got time to turn things around.
Oh, look, I think she started terribly. I think the disunity doesn't help. I don't think the consistency of policy helps her. And I don't think she'd be there at the next election.
I think there's a lot of people who feel the same, but we'll see. She might be able to turn things around. Who knows? Michael Costa, Cameron Milner, appreciate you coming on the program tonight. Thanks so much.